A lot of people ask me if there was a watershed moment or a time in my life that changed everything with my relationship with my wife, where I didn't really think it was going to go particularly well. And, I realized it was probably the end or the end of the relationship. And this is the first time you're seeing me, well, my wife passed away from alcohol use disorder a little over 4.5 years ago. She attended 7 rehabilitation facilities. She had 4 DUIs, multiple emergency stays, hospital stays, and psych holds. And unfortunately, there was one incident that happened in 2015 that really changed everything amidst all that, trial and error, and the effort that went into helping her. And it was the incident when my mother passed away back in 2015. And my mother had had a stroke. We lived in California. My parents lived in New York. We flew out there. I flew out there with my son and my wife. This would have been July of 2015. My mother had had a series of strokes, and it took about a month for her to pass away. It was a very just grueling, gripping time. And I will continue the conversation of what happened. So during the last couple of weeks of my mother's life, we would hold vigil with my father, my sister, my brother, friends, family were always stopping in. We were there for 6, 8 hours a day. My dad would be there for 12. I mean, it was his wife. They were married for 60 years, so it was a big deal. Very grueling, gripping time, watching my mother take her last breaths, and we used to count the breaths. But at one point, my son was with me, and he was 15 at the time, and he didn't want to stay there all the time. So we went back to my dad's house early one time, and it was probably 10 days we were there, and I came home, and my wife was passed out drunk in the middle of my dad's living room. And unfortunately, she was in a puddle of her own urine. And at the time, I was just like, I couldn't even believe that she had crossed this line because she didn't want to go to the hospital with us. And now I realized, for obvious reasons, I had no idea how she got alcohol or where she got it at the time. We were just absolutely mortified. And my son and I, we had to get her up. We got her back upstairs to get to bed, to get her cleaned up. And obviously I had to, clean up the family room. And after getting over the shock of finding my wife, it was just a feeling of just unbelievable betrayal. I mean, I'm at the hospital watching the last moments of my mother's life, and now I had to be consumed with dealing with my wife's issues. And it was just the unfairness of it. She had been drinking heavily on the flight there. It was one stress-filled day after another. And to be honest with you, we really wish I hadn't brought her. And at that point, I really was almost ready to just fly her home. Unfortunately, I knew that would have been another series of issues because her on her own. I mean, who knows? I mean, I would have had a dead wife at that time too. And these are things I had to think about. So rather than being able to grieve my mother, I had to spend all this effort and energy on dealing with my wife, and it really made me angry to the point where, what am I doing this anymore? So what had happened, and I'll tell you on the next set. And what we had discovered is that my wife had completely decimated my dad's liquor cabinet, and it really wasn't a whole lot of stuff. It was a bunch of dusty bottles that he had over the. They had an oven, and they had like a cabinet above that, one of these old school kitchens. And there's probably like an old bottle of Jack Daniels, vermouth, mixers. I mean, it wasn't even stuff that you drank, but it did have alcohol in it. Some of the bottles were probably 50 years old or more. I mean, my dad just didn't drink that much. If he did at all, it was just there. And she had consumed everything. I looked up in the cabinet. The cabinet was empty. And I just went, I just couldn't even believe that she would cross that kind of a line. And then we found out that she drank other stuff later on. My dad had a bunch of wine, a little wine rack near the fireplace, and it was from local wineries and friends that owned wineries that had given him wine. Some of them were very special; they were for weddings and things. And later, I discovered, after looking at them, that all the wine bottles were full of water. So she had not only drank all the wine bottles, she had tried to cover it up by putting water in them. And it was a betrayal that I never got over. And the two of us were never the same. After this incident, after this month, my mother passed away, and we ended up flying home. And there was other traumatic things that happened during that month. But I never saw her the same. And there was only one more time that I ever flew with her again. And again, that was under duress. And to be honest with you, one of the reasons why she went to so many rehabs, because in the summertime, my dad was getting older, and I wanted to fly home to see my family and be around my family. And a lot of times I would have to put her in a rehab because there was no way in hell you could leave her by herself. She would drink herself into oblivion, and it would have been nothing but a horror that most people, unless they've lived this, could possibly understand. But that's the story. What really changed everything was the watershed moment, and it's something I still it still doesn't sit well with me because my mother was very important person in my life, and I was really never able to grieve the way that I had wanted to at the time. And really, one of the main reasons why I tell this story is because I know so many other families and alcoholics go through this incredible degree of disappointment, and you have to work through that. And sometimes it's time to make a decision whether or not this is worth pursuing or staying together or even being around. And sometimes you do have to make the, the decision of separation and of distance, and that's okay. That's okay. Again, I want to point out I go live Monday through Friday right around 6 o'clock Pacific Standard Time, 9 o'clock Eastern Standard Time. And again, the Facebook group is called There's an Alcoholic in the Family. The link is in the bio. You don't have to go to Facebook. Just go to my link, go to the link tree, and you can find it right there. And also, when you're ready to work with me one-on-one, I have a complete coaching program that's designed to help families and the alcoholic. Set up a breakthrough call, takes about 45 minutes to an hour, and we do a deep dive into what's going on with you and your family. I've helped thousands of families and their alcoholics. And again, thank you so much for listening.